It started off like any other normal day, and I walked out with another pilot. We climbed into our F-18 and we went out over the ocean, and we did some great flying. I received a phone call from a doctor who had pulled a small tumor that was about the size of the tip of my pinky out of my jawbone, right here. Only 50 others that had what I had that they could show me, and not one of them had survived 5 years. We realized both the military and the civilian doctors didn't have a solution for us. It was a 0% success rate. It was a zero end game. I literally was thinking, well, let's just go now. Why go through the hell of cancer, and why go through what we're anticipating? All of what cancer brings as you go to your ultimate demise. As I looked back into my room and I saw my daughter asleep, 6 months old, asleep in the bed next to my wife, I knew at that moment I had to fight for them. I had a purpose. I'm Lieutenant Colonel David T-Bone Trombly, United States Marine Corps. I'm the first Marine fighter pilot to have fought a rare bone cancer, beat it naturally, and be reinstated to flight status. This story is for you to understand how we beat it, but more importantly, it's for you to learn about how you can have hope, peace, encouragement in whatever battle you're facing, whatever fire you're walking through, whatever valley you're in. This story starts in a cockpit, and it details the journey and a long fight to get back into a cockpit. You have a different fight. Whatever your fight is started somewhere, and you may not know the end game, but you have a goal, you have a desire, you have a path that you're currently on. My hope is, as you read, that you find hope, that you find peace, that you find encouragement, that you find empowerment to continue to fight your fight. Hello, Young Living Tribe. It's an honor to be with you guys again. It's been about 2 years since I've had a chance to speak to you guys during the YL Summit. I received a phone call from Jim Bob about a week or so ago asking me if I would participate and share a little bit of our cancer testimony that our family went through, and talk a little bit about water purification, something that's definitely needed by all of us, especially during this time and some of the challenges that we've been facing over the last few years. So as you can see by the introduction, it has been exactly 2 years since we published my first book, Grounded and Cured. And in this book is a detailed chronology of our story and everything that we did to fight our cancer battle holistically and alternatively, something that most of you will appreciate and resonate with. Our entire testimony and our story is pre our Young Living days. So in there, everything that we did that was done in the United States or overseas, the raw diet, the detoxing, the holistic approach, everything is detailed in those chapters. And so if you want to learn more about that, you can get that from the book, or you can reach out to me, private message me, and we can talk deeper about that. But today, I want to get very specific and detailed on one particular issue, the one Jim Bob asked me to talk about, and that is water purification. I dedicated 2 chapters of my book to water purification. One, the threat, the nature of water, the challenges that we face with the billions of pounds of toxic environmental toxins that have made it into our water supply since the Industrial Revolution. In the second chapter, I talk about the solution. How do we remove those toxins? What is the best way to do it? And I believe that's carbon-based. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. But as I do, I first just want to say that when we first moved to our community right after my diagnosis, we moved on military orders to our new home. We moved in on a Friday. On Sunday, we got the newspaper to figure out, let's learn about this community. Well, guess what? the local newspaper did a 16-page spread on how toxic Northwest Florida was. They didn't do that one Sunday. They did that 5 Sundays in a row. That's literally 16 pages, 5 weeks in a row, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, talking about all of the military bases that have been around here since World War II and everything that's been dumped into the soil and how those are Superfund sites. Talked about the solution and all the different power plants that were dumping, like through injection tubes, toxins deep into our aquifer, under the ground, hundreds of feet deep. All right? That it went from the local bayous and all the different creosote plants that had dumped dioxin, which is a tremendous toxin, into our ground and then seeping into our groundwater. Could you imagine being recently diagnosed with a rare cancer that no one else has beat, determining you're not going to fight it conventionally, moving to a new community within the first 3 months, and as soon as you get there, you've made this battle plan and this desire to go fight it naturally, and then you find out you're in one of the most toxic communities in America, and you're thinking, okay, God, well, if we're going to beat this naturally and it's going to be a miracle anyway, why not here in one of the most toxic environments in the country? So sure enough, we did. As we detail it in the book, we fast forward 11 months later, completely cancer-free in that toxic environment. But what was one of the main things we did? Whole house water purification. I want to use an analogy, and I know you got to be careful with these because when you use a sports analogy or you tell a joke, you could lose your audience. So I won't tell a joke, but I am going to use a sports analogy. And being from Boston, that means I'm a New England fan. So wait, before you shut it off, well, I'm going to just, for my friends in the South, roll Tide, but that's not who I'm supporting. I want you to understand that being a New England Patriot fan, it's been a great 20 years. Wait, don't shut it off yet. Here's what I want to tell you. Yes, Tom Brady's the GOAT. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. Yes, he played for one of the greatest coaches of all time on one of the greatest teams. And while they went to the Super Bowl 10 times over the past 20 plus years, did they win every single time? Now, those of you who aren't Patriots fans are like, no. Well, you're absolutely right. And I want to talk not about the wins, but I want to talk about those few games that they lost. Why did they lose? If you got the best quarterback, you got the best coach, and more often than not, they had the best offense. What was missing was the defense, right? And for those of you who are really into sports, you understand that defense wins championships. So when you think about what we were dealing with, right? I'm dealing with a rare bone cancer. I've got a toxic load in my body that's causing me to have this disease. We need to shut off the floodgates of toxins coming into the body. So what do you think of? Well, you think of, well, let's not eat bad food, let's eat raw food. Let's detox, let's cleanse. Well, here's the reality. It's not what we drink, it's not what we eat, and it's not what we breathe. Let me say that again. It's not what we drink, it's not what we eat, and it's not what we breathe. The largest source of toxic load on our bodies is the water that we bathe in, not what we drink. In fact, you got to drink toxic water for 5 years to absorb the same amount of cancer-causing toxins as your skin absorbs in 1 month. So let's do the math. 5 years, 1 month. 60 months, 1 month, right? That's a pretty significant spread. And most people don't think about that. Now, I know my audience. You're my Young Living brothers and sisters. You're my Young Living cousins, right? Across the country, around the world. You guys understand skin absorption, right? We totally get it. We put those oils on. We know what we put them on for. We know their purpose, and we know what system we're trying to support, whether it's the endocrine system, the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system. We understand the purpose of the oils, and we get skin absorption. And yet, how many of us, think about this, how many of us get up in the morning, hop in the shower, and don't think twice about taking, a 7-minute hot shower? Really? If that's you, let me just speak to you for a moment. I know you understand the power of skin absorption. There are over 7,000 contaminants, man-made toxins that are in our water since the Industrial Revolution over the last couple hundred years. Every industrialized nation has billions of pounds of toxic environmentals that are in our groundwater. And don't think it just stays in our country. It evaporates and goes around the world. You realize that there is something known as DDT, which we haven't used in decades. But DDT, a pesticide, a very powerful pesticide banned by the FDA, is actually able to be found in the polar ice caps. Like they can drill down and do core ice samples and find DDT. I'm pretty sure they never took C-130s up to the North Pole and put pesticides up there because you can't farm. So where's that coming from? Water's a closed cycle. There's no more water today there was when God created it. It is a closed loop. So all this environmental toxin that we have in these industrialized nations is spreading around the world. So it doesn't matter whether or not I move to one of the most toxic communities in America. It's all of America. It's all of Canada. It's to the North Pole. It's down to South Africa. We're all faced with the same threat. And since we understand that, and we know that it's an invisible, untastable threat. When I say invisible and untastable, let me just give you one example. We can smell chlorine in our water. You guys get that, I understand. But there are things called volatile organic compounds, VOCs. The word volatile is not explosive. Volatile just means that it will evaporate at a very low temperature. So you take a hot shower, those VOCs will evaporate, and where do they go? They're in the air, they're in the steam. You're taking your hot shower, you take that deep breath. Maybe you've got some sinus congestion. You put that towel over your head while you're in the shower. You're just breathing in those vapors. You're trying to break up your sinuses. Maybe even slapping on some oils while you're doing that. But you're also inhaling those unsmellable, volatile organic compounds. Those things have to be removed. Well, how do you do that? Different types of carbon, right? Sintar catalytic carbon and KDF85 are both great at removing VOCs, and those are in the product that I want to talk to you guys about. So while there is an unseen threat, there's an unsensed threat, there's still a threat. So now that you are aware of it, how do we solve it? Like, what's the solution? And why do we even need a solution? Like, how many of you think, all right, you understand the skin absorption piece, but how many of you think when you jump in the shower, now that I've told you what I've told you, how many of you are thinking right now, wait a second, I get a water quality report, I pay a bill, I spend my $79 a month, they send me safe water. How many of you guys have looked at the water quality report that comes to you every year, usually around January, and it says, here is the 2021 testing results, and it says, here's all the things we tested, maybe 30 items, maybe only 18, out of the 7,000 that are out there. And how many of those had a violation? And you go down that list, and guess how many violations there are? None, right? Because they're only going to list 18 to 30 things. How many of you have thought to yourself, well, wait a second, I'm paying for the water, they should be sending me something that's safe. Safe and healthy are two very different things, all right? And since I'm not talking about young living, I'm going to use the word healthy, okay? Here's the reality. There are things called maximum contaminant levels and maximum contaminant level goals. So if you don't mind, give me 2 minutes to just give you a hip pocket class on how that water quality report works and how the municipalities work as far as what they give to you. Federal regulations, local and state regulations. When you think of maximum contaminant level, those are those local regulations that say my arsenic level can't be above, say, 0.2 parts per billion. And so you look over and you see 0.2 is the level, that's a legal limit, and just to the right of it says 1.18. And so it says, well, that's what we tested at different times of the year, so 0.18 is less than 0.2. And it says violation. No, well, of course not. 0.18 is less than 0.2. But what you need to do is look all the way to the right of your water quality report. It'll say maximum contaminant level goal, the MCLG, not the MCL. And when you look at that for arsenic, what's it going to say? It's going to say 0, right? Why? Because the goal is saying, hey, as long as it's less than this, there's no chance of a health threat, all right? But what's the legal limit that we can let come to your house? Well, that's the maximum contaminant level. What do you think happens 4 or 5 years from now when that arsenic creeps up from 0.18 to 0.21 and it's now above the 0.2 maximum contaminant level? Where do you think your maximum contaminant level goes? Where do you think they vote to change the numbers to? 0.23? It's a shell game, right? The reality is you have to look at the maximum contaminant level goal and realize what can cause a health threat and what are the limits that we have. And then realize the best thing to do is get rid of all of it. And we need to get our water down to like 99% pure. And so I want to give you a solution for that today, and it's right here next to me. Now, Jim Bob has one of these. I have one of these. I've had a whole house water filtration system on my home for over 22 years since I got my original diagnosis. Remember, 3 months into my fight, we moved down here to Northwest Florida. We found out how toxic things were. Megan and I immediately stopped researching how to fight cancer naturally. we went right into how do we clean up the water, and we spent weeks on it. Remember, 5 weeks of getting bombarded by the news about how bad the water was here, and we had 4 children at the time. We now have 6, and my youngest children have never bathed or been in a home that didn't have whole house water purification. Right? So think of this for a second. We get this diagnosis, we go down this path, we're thinking about changing our diet, doing all this cleansing, detoxing, colon cleansing, and then we realize that the water's the biggest threat. We talk to every company you can think of. We research everything from distillation, which is really only drinking water, reverse osmosis, which is typically only drinking water. Sometimes you could spend, tens of thousands to do reverse osmosis for an entire home or resort. And then there's softening, which takes out minerals and heavy metals. And then there's whole house purification, where you have a carbon-based system, usually 2 types of carbon, like the Aquox has, and KDF, garnet, filter egg, all the different media that's required to get that water to 99% pure. Now this works for both cities and wells, and I've had the privilege of working with everyone from Royal Crown Diamonds in Young Living to just Young Living customers or friends and clients of Jim Bob that were seeing him when he was a chiropractor, to other Young Living cousins who've reached out and said, hey, we love our system and we want one for mom or for our friends. So we've had the privilege of helping over like 500-600 families clean up their water over the last 20 years. And many of them have been Young Living over the last 3 or 4 years. So Jim Bob, I want to thank you for that. So in my book, I talk about in detail the solutions. I give some of the scientific data as to why you can say 5 years vice 1 month. Then I kind of break down what some of those threats are. We talked about VOCs. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about every single threat because there's thousands, but I do want to talk about chlorine, I want to talk about fluoride, and I want to talk about chromium-6 briefly. You realize we need to have chlorine in our water? If we don't have chlorine in our water, what happens is bacteria gets in there, gets into our body, and it can develop dysentery, and that's what happens in third world countries, and that's a bad thing. So we want the chlorine in our water, but we want it to get the water to our house safely, not healthfully, get it to our house safely, and then we want to do something like this to remove that chlorine. See, it's not just chlorine that's in the water. Chlorine has what we call CBPs, chlorination byproducts. One of those are trihalomethanes, right? So now you've got chlorine mixes with organic material. One of the CBPs, or chlorination byproducts, is chloroform. Chloroform itself is when chlorine mixes with organic matter like human waste, skin, hair, grass clippings, organic material, and now chloroform is created. When you have that, that is one of the greatest cancer-causing agents. So chloroform, look at your water quality report. You'll see that that's there. So we want to take every chlorination byproduct out, every trihalomethanes. We can do that with the Aquox. Many of you understand the threat of fluoride, so I'm not going to give a class on it. You guys understand what it is. For those of you who don't understand where the fluoridation material comes from for the communities, they take the byproduct of the phosphate fertilizer industry and the aluminum industry, and they get what they call hydrofluorosilicic acid, and then they give it back to the government, repackaged, this toxic waste from the production, to repackaging it, and then they put it in our water in these quantities that says, hey, it acts like fluoride and gives our children strong teeth. Too much of that, though, can be very toxic. And I don't want any of it because hydrofluoric acid is a toxic combination of lead, mercury, arsenic, and other heavy metals. So how do we remove that? Well, if you want to reach out to me, I can give you more information on what is required to take fluoride out of the water, and we can discuss that in greater detail in a private message, or send me an email, or we'll talk and I can get that information to you. But one more thing that I want to share with you, and I can't talk about 7,000 contaminants, but chromium-6. How many of you guys are familiar with Erin Brockovich? You've seen the movie, phenomenal. It's a story that goes way back, decades. Erin Brockovich has made a return. Why? Because chromium-6 hasn't gone away, not in decades. It's not going to go anywhere. It has to be removed. And there's only one way to get rid of it. And depending on where you live and what your community is, you could have that threat. So there's the things that you need to know and understand, and I've been studying this for 20 years. So if you want to share with me your water quality reports, you want to talk to me about the community you live in, I can give you information on how you can get this information for your specific community, and then talk about what tools are needed to clean it up, I'd be happy to do that. So I don't really want to spend any more time on what the threat is. I want to talk about the solution. As I said, Jim Bob and I both have an Aquaox on our homes. I've had the privilege of sharing it with lots of folks. Aquaox is a company that has been around for quite some time, and I'm familiar. I know the owners. I'm not an owner, but they're good friends of mine, and they've given me the greatest discount you can get as part of our cancer support ministry, and I've been able to pass it on to our Young Living family. So it's really been tremendous. In fact, the discount that I currently have now saves over $1,500 over what I paid back in 2001. So we're talking over 20 years ago. Everything has gone up in price, and yet here we've got the highest quality system, and the price has come down. Why? Sheer volume and the numbers of people that I'm sending to them through our ministry, and others who are doing the same. So we have a special discount offer tied to the YL Summit. If you want to know what the price is, you want to know more about it, reach out to me. I'll be happy to pass that on to you. Just let me know you learned about us through the Young Living Summit, and I will pass that on to you. For more information on our story, you can go to my website, the groundedandcured.com, or you can go to the Facebook page, Grounded and Cured on Facebook, and send me a message, reach out, friend me, like me, follow us, and we can continue that conversation. Continue with that theme, groundedandcured@gmail. You can email me directly, or from groundedandcured.com, there's a way you can connect. You can also click on a link to Aquaox, read more about it. There's a special message from the owner of the company that talks about me and what we're doing and what we've been doing with our ministry. So we'd love to share more about that with you guys. Again, it's been a tremendous honor. Jim Bob Chase, thanks for having me out here today. Again, it's been great to share with you guys. Have a blessed rest of your summit, and if you haven't already done it, go back to Sunday and hear my sweet bride Megan. She spoke about the mindset makeover. Phenomenal. She's just awesome. So if you haven't seen Sundays, go back and check that out. She did a phenomenal job about mindset, shared a little bit more about our testimony and our cancer fight, but she really focused in on putting the past behind you and gives you a whole lot of good hows on how to focus on your why, move forward, change your mindset, and put all that behind us. Do you think maybe we need to put the last 3 years behind us? I think it'd be a good one to watch. Anyway, thanks guys. It's been an honor to be here. Looking forward to watching everybody else's summit presentations. Have a blessed rest of your week.